Welcome back to Weirdest World, the channel where the strange isn't just explored, it's lived. Today, we're diving into one of the most extraordinary and unsettling stories of alleged time travel ever recorded. It's the tale of Paul Amadeus Dienach, a man who claimed to have visited the year 3906 not in a dream, not through a machine, but through a consciousness shift during a coma. He described a future so radically different from our own that it challenges everything we think we know about humanity, technology, and existence itself. And if you stay with me until the end, I'll share a weird fact about this story that most people miss. One that might make you wonder whether this was truly fiction or something far stranger. Let's start with the man himself. Paul Dienach was a Swiss-Austrian professor of languages, born in 1884. He lived a quiet life teaching German and French, and was known for being introspective, philosophical, and deeply curious about metaphysics. In 1921, he contracted a rare form of encephalitis lethargica, a disease that left him in a coma for nearly a year. During that time, his body remained in a hospital bed in Geneva. But according to Dienach, his mind was somewhere else entirely. He claimed that his consciousness had somehow transferred into the body of a man named Andreas Northam, living in the year 3906. Dienach didn't just observe the future, he lived in it. He spent months inside Northam's body, experiencing daily life, learning the language, absorbing the culture, and interacting with people who had no idea he wasn't one of them. So what did he see? First, the world was unrecognizable. The Earth had undergone massive transformations. There were no countries, no borders, no flags. Humanity had unified under a single planetary government known as the Supreme Council of the Earth. This wasn't a dictatorship or a bureaucracy. It was a decentralized, artificial intelligence-assisted council made up of philosophers, scientists, and spiritual leaders. Decisions were made based on logic, ethics, and long-term sustainability, not politics or profit. Cities had evolved into vertical ecosystems. Imagine towering structures that stretched miles into the sky, each level dedicated to a specific function: agriculture, education, recreation, habitation. These megastructures were surrounded by vast stretches of untouched nature, carefully preserved and monitored by autonomous drones. Pollution was a thing of the past. Energy came from quantum fusion reactors, and transportation was instantaneous via teleportation hubs powered by gravitational manipulation. But the most striking change wasn't technological, it was human consciousness. Dienach described a society where people had developed telepathic abilities, not in a sci-fi mind-reading way, but through a subtle emotional resonance. People could sense each other's intentions, feelings, and thoughts. This led to a culture of radical empathy. Crime was nearly non-existent, not because of surveillance, but because people simply couldn't bring themselves to harm one another. Education was no longer about memorizing facts. Children were taught philosophy, ethics, and the history of consciousness. They learned about the Great Transition, a period between the 21st and 23rd centuries when humanity nearly destroyed itself through war, climate collapse, and economic implosion. Billions died, governments fell, but out of that chaos, a new civilization emerged. Survivors rebuilt society with a focus on harmony, sustainability, and spiritual growth. Religion as we know it had disappeared. Not banned, just obsolete. People believed in a universal energy, a kind of cosmic intelligence that connected all living things. There were no churches, no rituals, no dogma. Spirituality was personal, experiential, and deeply integrated into daily life. Meditation was as common as breathing. People lived in a state of constant awareness, connected to each other and to the planet. Dienach described his life as Andreas Northam in vivid detail. He lived in a residential pod on the 87th level of a vertical city called Elysium Prime. His home was minimalist, no furniture, just adaptive surfaces that changed shape based on need. Meals were synthesized from organic molecules tailored to his nutritional profile. He worked as a professor at the Institute of Temporal Studies, where he taught students about the evolution of time perception across human history. He attended symposia where philosophers debated the nature of reality, consciousness, and the multiverse. He visited memory archives, massive crystalline structures that stored the experiences of every human who had ever lived, accessible through neural interfaces. He walked through gardens where plants responded to emotion, blooming in the presence of joy and wilting in the presence of fear. He also experienced relationships. Love in 3906 was not possessive or transactional. It was fluid, based on mutual resonance. People connected through shared energy, not appearance or status. Dienach described a woman named Althea, a fellow professor, with whom he shared a deep emotional bond. Their connection was telepathic, transcending language. They didn't speak, they felt. But Dienach knew he didn't belong. He was a visitor, a ghost in someone else's body. Eventually, his consciousness began to fade. He felt himself being pulled back, like a thread unraveling. When he awoke in 1922, he was back in his own body in a hospital bed and surrounded by doctors who had no idea what he'd just experienced. He spent the rest of his life writing down everything he remembered. His journal was massive, hundreds of pages detailing the future in astonishing detail. He never intended to publish it. He feared ridicule. But before his death, he gave the manuscript to one of his students, George Papahatsis, who later became a professor and a member of the Greek parliament. Papahatsis believed Dienach's story. He tried to publish the journal, but it was suppressed. The Greek government allegedly feared the impact of its contents. The book was banned for decades and only resurfaced in the early 2000s. Translated into multiple languages and circulated among metaphysical communities, skeptics say Dienach was hallucinating, that his coma-induced visions were just dreams. But here's the problem. His descriptions were too detailed, too consistent, and too alien to be easily dismissed. He described technologies that didn't exist in his time, social structures that hadn't been imagined, and a timeline of events that eerily mirrors our current trajectory. And now, as promised, here's your weird fact. Dienach predicted that between 2025 and 2035, humanity would begin what he called the First Awakening, a shift in consciousness marked by mass unrest, environmental collapse, and a growing interest in metaphysics. He said this period would be chaotic, but necessary. And here we are, in 2025, facing climate emergencies, global protests, and a surge in spiritual exploration. Coincidence? Or did Dienach really see something? So what do we make of this? Was Paul Dienach a visionary, a madman, or a time traveler? His story remains one of the most compelling and mysterious accounts of future travel ever recorded. And whether you believe it or not, it forces us to ask, what if the future is already written? What if someone has seen it and tried to warn us? Thanks for watching Weirdest World. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another journey into the bizarre. Until next time, keep your mind open, because the future might already be watching us.